Crystal Kaizo Plus, the forgotten child. The abandoned run on this channel. I literally have an active, alive Nuzlocke run with 5 badges in this game that I haven't touched in months. Mostly because other games have been destroying my life. But the very dedicated community of this game has been more active than ever. Liam, the lead developer of Crystal Kaizo Plus, came to me with a proposal. 7 Nuzlockers enter. Only one can leave as the champion. The game is a draft race. The players take turns selecting Pokemon until every fully evolved Generation 2 Pokemon is off the board. Then, they're given a Crystal Kaizo Plus save file where they start just outside the Dragon's Den. Their mission, beat the Elite Four and champion Lance using only the Pokemon they've selected. Every single runner here has completed the Crystal Kaizo Plus Hardcore Nuzlocke. They know what's ahead of them. Every opposing Pokemon has great stats, many with perfect IVs. Their movesets are beyond optimized, sometimes borrowing the perfect signature moves from other Pokemon. A bunch have incredibly trolly items like Bright Powders, Quick Claws, and Focus Bands, and with their limited boxes, the players are going to have to be ready for some insanely powerful threats awaiting them at Indigo Plateau. Everybody had their own approach to the draft. 3 Pokemon, Jolteon, Starmie, and Heracross, were decided to be so good that selecting them would come with a punishment. Whoever took them would have to skip their next pick. Between Jolteon's speed, Starmie's coverage, and Heracross's power, these Pokemon absolutely can make the impact of 2 Pokemon at once. Jolteon and Starmie went early despite the punishment. Dilo took Starmie as a second pick, and Nakolai took Jolteon right after that. Heracross lasted a bit longer, not coming off the board until Gian's 9th pick, where the remaining options were much less appealing. In a winning Nuzlocke run of this game, players usually have all 3 of these monsters, and with the limited selection available, with trainers limited to the Gen 2 Pokedex, these guys are supremely valuable. But would these picks pay off? The general consensus among the viewers was that either Gian or P-Town came away with the best draft. Both had really strong fire, water, grass cores, multiple strong water types to help deal with Aerodactyls, the prime threat in this game, and really strong dark types in Tyranitar and Houndoom respectively. Most of the question marks surrounded DRXX's draft. DRXX is a great Pokemon player, but of this group, he probably had the least recent practice with Crystal Kaizo Plus, with no experience with the current patch. He had a lot of good individual picks, another strong dark type in Sneasel, and his own fire, water, grass core with his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th picks. But his team looked very weak to Aerodactyl, and that doesn't bode well for this split. Before long, they were off. 20 fights were all that stood between them and victory. Everybody made it through the first fight against Cool Trainer Darren unscathed, but the trainer's ability to balance playing smart with playing fast was already being tested. The early lead went to Emmy, the creator of the most important resource in Crystal Kaizo Plus, and probably the single most robust resource ever made for any Pokemon game, Crystal Kaizo Plus Calculator. She needed just 3 minutes and 23 seconds, getting her through this fight a half minute faster than the 2nd place Gian, who you might know is the first player in history to have beaten Emerald Kaizo. Unsurprisingly to anybody within the CK Plus community, Emmy came into this race with a plan. She said after the race that she had calculated a full spreadsheet of values for every single Pokemon up for draft based on their effectiveness across the 20 fights the runners would be taking on. Everything was in its place, and her planning was already paying off. This is one of the big tests for Nuzlockers playing in this kind of race. In a lot of ways, the approaches to speedrunning Pokemon and Nuzlocking Pokemon are at odds with each other. Anybody who has been watching my Run and Bun streams or the pChal daily videos knows how long I spent cooking for fights. I'll spend hours if it means I can avoid even a single-digit % chance of things going wrong. Speedrunners are the exact opposite, constantly pushing the limits of how many risks they can take if it means shaving a few seconds off their final time. A race like this forces trainers to find the middle ground. You have to spend enough time and preparation optimizing so your Aerodactyl check doesn't die to some random Pokemon, but spend too much time and you'll wind up so far behind after a few fights that it won't matter that your whole box is alive. The difficulty already starts to ramp up in the next fight against Cool Trainer Kara. It's a full team of 6, features the first Aerodactyl of the split, and has so many ways to hax you. 2 Mons built to spread paralysis, and 3 potential ancient power boosters, a Bright Powder, and a Focus Band. Electric types do great here, though hitting everything but the Electrode for at least neutral damage, and hitting half the team for super effective damage. DRXX got immediate use out of one of the later picks, his Lantern, which let him get the ball rolling with a Thunderbolt crit. But Dirk's luck wouldn't continue. He immediately whiffed against the Bright Powder Dunsparce, and worse, his Kingdra took a crit against the Charizard that essentially forced him to sacrifice the 3rd pick of his draft right away. Time-wise though, it wasn't so bad. DRXX managed to take advantage of one of CK Plus's unique enemy AI bugs. Explosion and self-destruct Pokemon actually won't boom unless they don't see a kill. This was a happy little accident of AI programming that Liam, the creator of the hack, decided to leave in because he enjoyed the gameplay implications. The rest of the racers took their time for this one. DRXX actually got through the subsequent fight, a quick one against a pair of Dragonites, faster than anybody else got through the Kara fight. Everybody else got through clean, but a few racers were already separating themselves. DRXX had over a 2-minute lead with Emmy and Gian nearly tied for second. Those who were nearly 8 minutes ahead of the nearest competitors, Nakolai and pChal, with Aggron and Dilo bringing up the rear. Next came the only shared encounter these racers would be using in their runs. The Dratini you were awarded in the Dragon's Den for correctly answering the Master's quiz questions. Like any good ROM hack, the answers in Crystal Kaizo Plus are changed a bit from Vanilla Crystal, and it turned out the answers had changed since the last patch DRXX had played on.
What?
Come on, Trip.
What?
Come on.
It's supposed to be pal, raising, anybody love, and both, right?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Oh,
Absolutely
it's
not.
changed. It's changed. It's changed.
It's changed? What do you mean it's changed?
Look at it's changed. Okay.
You think the original Crystal Dash put balling as an answer in there?
Oh no, I looked at my old VOD and I saw what I clicked.
It's
is it
yeah,
changed
because it's
between
been updated
patches?
since then.
Yeah, but
Yes.
But
How
like,
was I supposed to know that?
Now you might think, oh, this isn't a big deal, he still got the Dratini. But the reward Dratini, if you pass the quiz, has one of the biggest reasons to use Dragonite in the first place, extreme speed. Instead, Dirks gets Leer. Man könnte sagen, ist leer ausgegangen. Dragonite is absolutely key to getting past the split in a standard Nuzlocke, coming to most, if not all, fights. The next section brings in one of the key mechanics of Crystal Kaizo Plus, back-to-backs. These sets of trainer battles happen one after the other with no opportunity to heal or change your team or held items in between. The first set of back-to-backs, Megan and Jose, isn't too bad. The second one just has a Farfetch'd. It's a particularly messed up Farfetch'd, but nothing our heroes can't handle. The following pair, Blake and Rena, are much scarier, with 8 combined Pokemon and all 3 of the troll items present: Quick Claw, Bright Powder, and Focus Band. DRXX's run kept going downhill, as he lost yet more time trying to find a headbutt TM that was already in his bag. That was enough to put him over 2 minutes behind the leaders, Emmy, closely followed by Gian. The separation from before was still sticking though, as DRXX had nearly a 10-minute cushion over pTown and the rest of the crew after taking down Megan, the first of the back-to-back trainers, even though he was pushed even deeper into tilt after losing his Hitmonlee to another new patch wrinkle, high jump kick recoil.
It's not lower deck. That killed me! How did that kill?
It took until the next couple sets of back-to-backs for some moves to be made. pTown's hyped-up box finally started to show its stuff against the barrage of Psychic-type Pokemon from these trainers. Houndoom was obviously great here as a Dark-type to soak up the Psychic damage, but it also gave safe entry points for the Psychic-weak Hitmonchan and Tentacruel to come in when needed. After blazing through the back-to-back of Cool Trainer Brian and Psychic Gilbert, with 4 Psychic types out of the 8 Pokemon, pTown had moved into third and made up more than 5 minutes on the leaders of the pack. Emmy started to fall behind Gian here, taking a slower fight against Brian than the other leaders, mostly due to losing her Electabuzz to a massive Dodrio double edge. She also was continuing to deal with controller issues, having to reset a few times when her emulator stopped reading her controller. Seizing the opportunity, Gian exited Gilbert with a 4-minute lead thanks to a couple of clean fights with some serious contributions with one of his later draft picks, Apom, whose Shadow Ball was great into these teams of Psychics and Ghosts. As Nakolai, Aggron, and Dilo prepared for the next trainers, pTown, Emmy, DRXX, and Gian moved towards the next back-to-back. Cool Trainer Jake, and Fisher Scott. Jesus, there's way too many character names in the script. Shit looks like a Sopranos episode. The difficulty ramps up yet again here. A 9 Pokemon mini gauntlet full of bulky threats. This fight is a serious box check with 15 of the 17 possible types. Everything except Fire and Dark represented across the 9 Pokemon the trainers will face. Gian just kept finding uses for his late draft picks. Against Jake and Scott, he found uses for his many water types. Blastoise, Gian's 10th pick was the perfect lead here, with Earthquake to bait in Jake's Magneton and shred it, and Ice Beam to take down the lead Dragonite in the subsequent fight against Scott. pTown kept on making up time, thanks to a valiant effort from the Kangaskhan that he was finally forced to sacrifice against Scott's last Mon. Still, this was enough to push him into second behind Gian, as Emmy and DRXX both got bogged down in the split. Emmy's box was mostly safe, but she wound up in a nasty spot against Misdreavus, where her best answer was to take it out with her Ditto. Plenty effective, but slow enough to push her to fourth behind pTown and DRXX. The story of Dirks' race, so far, was that he was making really good time, despite the Dratini incident and the loss of his Kingdra, but it was all about to come crashing down for him against Scott. After his Espeon just barely missed a range against Scott's Dragonite, everybody, including DRXX, seemed convinced that a wipe was coming. But then...
So Nax up on the
Yeah,
next
Drew's wiping.
Yeah, Drew's lost.
Oh,
Wait.
Oh my god.
He's
He
wait.
killed Koga in
Crap
one hit.
armor crit might kill.
No.
Crap armor crit. Crap armor crit.
yeah. If the crowd.
No, I think he's fine. He's fine. Even if he doesn't, right? He gets Dragonite to with Flamethrower. He doesn't wipe.
Yep.
He's not wiping. Oh my god.
DRXX wound up losing 5 Pokemon in this fight, but as long as you have a Pokemon in your box, you have a chance. The fights in this game are designed to wipe you if you make a single mistake, or even get one particularly bad roll of RNG. Slow and steady just might be the answer. As the 4 leaders moved on to the next set of back-to-backs, Dilo, Aggron, and Nakalite were still pushing through Brian and Gilbert when Crystal Kaizo Plus claimed its first casualty. Aggron's team got utterly stomped on by Gilbert's Jinx, as his Dark-type, Umbreon, just couldn't get damage fast enough on all the Psychic-type threats in these fights before it went down. The Dawn fan then claimed the kill on Aggron's Machamp thanks to a Quick Claw proc, and his run was basically over right there. Dilo and Nakalai would eventually make it through, and their boxes were looking pretty solid, but the rest of the pack had an over 20-minute head start on them heading into the second half of the race. At this point, all that stood between the leaders and the Elite Four was 4 trainers. Gene was the first to challenge Cool Trainer Joyce. Meganium and Gligar did most of the work here, with Mantine chipping in with some much-needed waterfalls into the fortress. Where a lot of the prior trainers featured balanced teams with multiple ways of wearing you down, this one is all about just throwing down huge physical attacks. All 6 of Gavin's Pokemon are holding a Berserk Gene, which grants the holder +2 attack on consumption in exchange for confusing it. It's a unique item to Gen 2 that was never put into any future games because everyone that works at Game Freak is a coward. This is one of the RNG heaviest fights in the game, and it's absolutely a potential box check. With all of these Earthquake spammers, you definitely need a flyer. Luckily, everybody had at least one, Dragonite, although Gian opted to use Gligar as his flyer for this fight. You, on the other hand, won't need any flyers to change location thanks to the sponsor of today's video. Let's be real. It's never been as hard to find good content on streaming services as it is now. You want to get the most value possible out of the sites that you're already subscribed to. Luckily, the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, has you covered. Connect to hundreds of different servers in 50+ different countries to get access to content on your favorite streaming sites that you might be geo-locked out of otherwise. It can be especially annoying to be traveling to a different country only to realize that the show you were watching is not available there. Nord will get you access back by you just connecting to your home country. Prices of hotels and rental cars are heavily based on your current location, so by switching said location with Nord, you can actually save a pretty good chunk of your travel expenses as well, not to mention staying safe on public Wi-Fi networks. If there's anything wrong, they have 24/7 customer support, as well as a 30-day money-back guarantee. There's absolutely no risk to signing up. Get a huge discount and 4 extra months using my exclusive deal over at nordvpn.com/pChal. Thanks to Nord for sponsoring the content. Let's jump back into the terror that is Gavin's Berserk Gene Pokemon. P-Town also made great use of Venusaur, which walled Gavin's lead Electrode. This is a fight where you can try to take more of a speedrunner approach and take risks while hoping for good luck. P-Town wound up forced into a bad spot after realizing he had forgotten to teach his Dragonite Fly to deal with Gavin's Machamp. He decided to just go for it anyway. Extreme Speed missed the KO, but it didn't matter. The Machamp hit itself in confusion, and when it was all said and done, P-Town was the second player through Gavin, just a couple minutes behind Gian now. DRXX came out in third, making good time with an extremely thin box. He had to sacrifice his Scyther to find an entry point for his Sneasel against Gavin's Aerodactyl, but it got the job done, and so did his Executor, hard switching into the boosted Machamp and shrugging off a Rock Slide before ending the fight with a Psychic. Emmy made it through next, with lead Dragonite blasting for the first couple of Mons with the help of 2 huge hits of confusion, and Xatu serving as a great switch-in with the ability to one-shot the enemy Quagsire with Giga Drain. Less than 8 minutes separated Gian and Emmy at this point, with DRXX and P-Town right between them. The second part of this back-to-back against Cool Trainer Beth is designed to make trainers pay if they lose their big damage dealers to Gavin's Berserk Gene boosted monsters. Espeon, Chansey, and Starmie all have the ability to heal forever if you don't have big enough damage to break through, and between Espeon's Sing, Chansey's Thunder Wave, and random Ice Beam or Thunderbolt status procs, Beth can either slow the run down to a slog, or even hacks it to death entirely. None of these trainers let any of that nonsense happen here, as they did a good job of keeping their physical attackers healthy enough to break these walls. Now, it gets extremely real. 6 fights remain. The final fight against the rival, followed by the Elite Four and Champion Lance. Gian's head start slowly slipped away, as he spent a few minutes planning for this battle, but when you look at the 6 Pokemon coming at you here, it's fully understandable. There's Tauros, the rest-talking double-edged spamming monster. Beyond that, everything has near perfect coverage. The lead Ampharos can use Thunder Wave to ruin the rest of the fight, and there's not 1, not 2, but 3 potential Ancient Power users who could spiral out of control. In order to make the Elite Four possible, it usually requires some very specific Pokemon in a normal Nuzlocke. The remote PC will be active between Elite Four fights, allowing trainers access their full box between battles. It might have otherwise been tempting to just cook up a fight full of sacrificial lambs for the rival, knowing you'll only take 6 into the Elite Four, but here the trainers are all definitely looking to keep their boxes as healthy as possible. Gian had to give up one of his picks for Heracross, and it hadn't seen much use until now, but it was the lead for his rival fight. Its submission hit like a truck and let him clear the Ampharos with an easy 2-hit KO.
Oh, Jan is riding? Jan is riding?
Oh, get him in here.
Oh no. He's sick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that sucks. Hope he feels better.
Well, fuck you, Jan. You could have wrote me a message at least that you're sick, you know?
Yeah, you could have sent that yesterday.
Editor, put this into the video.
Unfortunately, as good as Heracross's fighting stab sounds here, it can't really switch into the fast and strong Tauros. Gien's strategy, although effective, was a bit time consuming. Pivot through Gligar, get a Screech off, then use Skarmory to wall it and take it out with Rest Talk. And he lost a bit more time after getting stuck in a Meganium versus Meganium matchup. Meanwhile, after P-Town got through Tauros with Cross Chop for Alligator, his Porygon 2 decimated the rival's team and could have made it out alive if it had hit one final Ice Beam range. Even with a lost P2, P-Town came out of the rival fight in first, just under 2 minutes ahead of the rest of the pack. With a limited box, DRXX was pretty much forced into some risky strategies against the rival. He'd spent a lot of this run backed into a corner and risking it on RNG, and here he was again.
I think we're just, yeah, we ball. We ball. Come on. Come on. I couldn't get Electabuzz in the draft. This is the second best option. Don't freeze. Come on.
He got the roll, and even though he missed the range on the Tauros with Bone Meringue, it only cost him a few turns. It was a fast enough fight that he came out just a few text boxes ahead of Gien, and second by 5 seconds within 2 minutes of P-Town's lead. Emmy was hot on everybody's tail, as she made up 5 minutes on Gien with a really clean rival fight needing fewer than 10 turns to get through. She was behind, but she had all the pieces in place to handle these final fights, even after spending her Fortress for an explosion to get through the rival. She was only 4 minutes behind P-Town as they all headed into Indigo Plateau. Will's team is full of special attacking threats, but there's no question who the scariest Pokemon on this team is, the Exeggutor, which becomes nearly unstoppable if it can get even one Ancient Power boost. This wouldn't be that scary given how slow Exeggutor is, except this one is holding a Quick Claw. At some point, this fight forces runners to put their faith in the RNG, and we all know how fickle of a beast that is. P-Town found out. First, it was a Quick Claw from the Exeggutor to catch his Dragonite with a Psychic, but he managed to take it down with Houndoom, and he was one Pokemon away from making it through to Koga when this happened.
It crit me. Oh, I wipe now. I actually just lose. I lose.
That's how quickly it can turn. The Quick Claw is about 23% to proc, and the crit is 1 in 16. Individually, these are things you can play around, but when you're playing against the clock, and with a limited box, eventually you're going to be forced to let it all ride. You accept that the roughly 1% chance of disaster might end your run. With P-Town down, 5 runners remained, and both Nakolai and Dilo were so far behind that they were unlikely to finish within the 3-hour time limit. Emmy also got hit with a Quick Claw, losing her Magmar. She also chose a risky line, exposing her Aerodactyl to a couple of Quick Claw turns and a potential Ancient Power boost, but Aero clutched up, and she was able to get through, putting her within a couple minutes of the lead. DRXX's box, light as it was, still had great answers for Will, including a couple of his own versions of Will's Pokemon in Slowking and Exeggutor. Sneasel also was a perfect lead to take down the Espeon, and it wasn't done doing work in this fight. He was only slowed down by some Moonlights from the Clefable. Meanwhile, Gien took a bit more time to plan and entered the fight about a minute after DRXX, but his team cut through Will like it was nothing. He really only needed 4 Pokemon, Heracross, Arcanine, Slowbro, and Gengar, combined to get Gien out of the first room of the Elite Four with a 27-second lead over DRXX, making up over a minute in the fight itself. On to Koga. Beyond the poison types you probably expect from him, Koga is packing a lead Electrode and a blazing fast Scyther. DRXX's small box actually turned out to be a benefit for some of these late fights. With fewer Pokemon, there were fewer decisions for him to make in the planning phase. After healing up, he pretty much went straight into Koga, jumping into the lead. The fight started out scary, as his Exeggutor just couldn't clutch up. It missed a Sleep Powder, got paralyzed by a Thunderbolt, and then got boomed to fall to a critical hit. But DRXX didn't panic. He still had another Psychic type in Slowking, a Ground type in Marowak, and thanks to the level up he took against Will, he now finally had Extreme Speed Dragonite. It was more than enough to get through, and he exited Koga with a nearly 3-minute lead. Emmy came out of the Koga fight in third, about 5 minutes behind, after a burn on her Beedrill forced her to take a more scenic route through the fight. She also lost her Dodrio here to the Crobat, but other than maybe against Bruno's Heracross, it wasn't providing much value beyond this room anyway. She was just over a minute behind Gien, who started the fight out by getting his Dig switched in on, wasting 2 turns as Koga brought in Scyther. A Macargo Boom saved Gien a bit of time, but he also had to rely on Skarmory and its poison immunity in this fight, not exactly a Pokemon known for finishing battles quickly. Next was Bruno, probably the most revamped of the Crystal Kaizo Plus Elite Four fights. Instead of a notoriously weak boss fight against some very frail Pokemon, CK Plus loads him up with a team that both has a lot more bulk and a lot more diversity. It all starts with the lead Blastoise. Sure, you might have a good answer, but will it be able to handle the physical threat that comes in after it? If not, good luck switching in on any of these beasts. DRXX finally dug up one of his Pokemon from the purgatory it had been sitting in since pretty much the beginning of the race, Parasect. It had spent so much time rotting in the box that Dirks forgot to level it. Surely, that won't matter.
Big P. Dodge it. Come on, big. I'm level 71. Okay. I am level 71.
Okay, it actually didn't, but imagine if that Ice Beam crit. Despite wasting a turn clicking Toxic into Steelix, DRXX was in a fine spot after Slowking took it out. And then he was presented with a dilemma. The Ursa Ring had what was essentially a 50-50 range against his Slowking. Was it worth risking the run to go for the Waterfall KO? He decided to let it ride.
No way, right? Oh my god! Dude, what is happening? What is happening? What is happening? What is happening?
It turned out to be a tremendous call for DRXX, as steering out of that situation after switching out wasn't guaranteed, and even if he succeeded, it was definitely going to cost him some time. Instead, he was able to get the KO, get his Dragonite in on the Heracross, and get back on track. The Parasect even chipped in with another big spore on the Snorlax. Nearly 2.5 hours after DRXX walked into the Dragon's Den, he had taken out Bruno. Only 17 seconds later, it was Gian's turn. The time DRXX had taken to make his decision on risking the range against the Ursa Ring allowed Gian to make up the time he had lost in the planning phase of the last fight. Heracross is one of the most common leads on this fight in a standard Nuzlocke run, and Gian showed why, shredding the Blastoise and Ursaluna by simply clicking submission 3 times. A wing attack deleted Bruno's own bug before Heracross was finally forced to get out, rather than risk a fire punch from the Snorlax. Despite taking things a bit slow against the Snorlax, Gian made up enough time on Bruno to basically turn this race into a tie. And so did Emmy, who, like DRXX, dove deep into her box for a bug type that turned out to be the perfect answer to this fight. Ledian hadn't really done much for her in this race, but it was the ultimate counter to the Snorlax. If you watch my most recent long run and bun attempt, you'll be familiar with this strategy. She baited the Earthquake from the Snorlax, switched in Ledian, locked it in with Encore, and let the Dragonite go to work. This was clearly a plan she'd been sitting on ever since picking Ledian in the draft, and it paid off. After coming out of Koga nearly 5 minutes behind, she was now just 20 seconds out of the lead. This was beyond what anybody could have expected. With 3 radically different boxes and with all the RNG at play, these 3 players have been playing for over 2.5 hours and were somehow all separated by just 20 seconds, with only 2 fights to go. Gian was the most experienced CK Plus veteran of the trio remaining, and his box looked to be the healthiest. Emmy was showing off some beautifully calculated strategies to save time, and surely she had more up her sleeve. And then there was Dirks, who had overcome an absolutely tilting start and the early loss of one of his best Pokemon to somehow hold the lead. His draft was holding up, bolstered by some extremely confident plays in terrifying situations. This time, Gian was the fastest out of the planning phase and was the first to challenge Karen. After the first 2 Pokemon, Karen's Gengar and Miltank, it was still neck and neck, despite DRXX getting hit by a paralysis into a full pair on his Granbull. The big time sink in this fight is definitely Karen's Umbreon, which doesn't have a single attacking move and is just looking to stall you out with Toxic, Double Team, Moonlight, and Confuse Ray. Emmy didn't give it a chance to set up, hitting it with a couple of Psy Waves before it switched out. Dragonite destroyed Karen's remaining Pokemon and was able to hit through a Double Team to end the battle. Emmy was the first one through. DRXX meanwhile took a brutal crit against Karen's Houndoom, losing his Slowking. The rest of the battle seemed fine for him, albeit potentially annoying against the Umbreon. But now he was once again faced with the question, what the hell does he have for Aerodactyl? It's a question he would have to answer later because now he had to steer. Parasect clutched up for him once again, landing a huge Toxic onto the Umbreon that allowed him to make it through without much delay. He was on to Lance, but Emmy had a 3-minute lead heading into the final fight. Gian was hot on both their heels. He solved the Umbreon problem the same way DRXX did, using Toxic from Mantine to stall out the Staller. He also lost a bit of time on the Mischievous compared to DRXX and Emmy, choosing to safely chip away at it with Lumberry Meganium to avoid getting sent off the track by any Hypnosis Fiction. He was 4 minutes behind Emmy and just over a minute behind DRXX, well within striking distance, but despite leading for most of the race, he now needed some help from Lance if he wanted to win. Emmy had everything calculated. She went into Lance almost instantly, leading Wobbuffet into his Kangaskhan. Counter was just barely enough to kill after it soaked up the return damage. 5 to go. Here's the Aerodactyl everyone needed a plan for. Emmy's was simple. Destiny Bond, and down they both went. 4 to go. Cloyster came in to chip down Kingdra, and after the sacrifice, Emmy sent in Dragonite to kill with extreme speed, except it missed the range. Double Edge came nowhere near killing, but Dragonite was the heavy hitter on her team, and its health was extremely valuable. As Emmy challenged Lance's Gyarados, DRXX engaged the final battle. and Marowak took the first KO after a couple of turns against the Kangaskhan, as Emmy pivoted into Misdreavus, taking her 4th KO against Lance with Thunderbolt. She was still in trouble though, with her Misdreavus staring down a Tyranitar that was 1 Ancient Power boost away from ending the run. She chose to Hypnotize, and it missed. No boost, but she was still in a rough spot. She went to Ditto and hoped to win a speed tie and take it down with Earthquake. No dice there either. She went to Aerodactyl, hoping to hit a range or get a crit, and again, she just couldn't get anything to go her way. It all came down to the Dragonite. E-Speed took down the Tyranitar, and it was down to the 1v1. DRXX was still on his 2nd Pokemon at the Lance fight. Gian hadn't even entered the battle. It was right in front of her. Her Dragonite just had to win a speed tie to take it.
Holy shit. I have to dodge, I have to dodge, you have to hold, D-Knight. That's so fucking crazy. That's how it goes. I dodged so much.
Disaster strikes Emmy. We would find out later that Emmy didn't just lose a speed tie here. This was also just a 1 in 3 range, putting the odds of the turn at a mere 1 in 6 to lose. Despite everything that happened on the final 2 Pokemon, the Hypnosis miss, the near miss with Aerodactyl's Earthquake, and the speed tie loss with Ditto, she still had an over 80% chance to win the game right there. But sometimes, Pokemon just says no. 2 racers still had a chance. As Emmy fell on the doorstep of the Hall of Fame, DRXX was dealing with bad luck of his own, missing a Thunder with his Chansey into the Gyarados that he was still trying to solve. As DRXX's Lance sent out the Aerodactyl everybody had been worried about since the draft, Gian finally walked up and challenged the final fight. This is what DRXX had been relying on Sudowoodo for this whole time. Its massive defense stat would allow it to take an Earthquake and it could hit back with a vengeance with Ancient Power. DRXX locked it in.
No! No, dude! Oh, I think it's over. Shoots.
No, he's super fine. He's super fine. He
Yeah,
doesn't
he just
die.
got
On a
down
crit,
crit,
on a
right?
crit, on a crit, on a crit. No!
Oh my god.
Okay, I think that's it
Oh
for
my
Drew.
god. Oh my god.
That is it for Drew. Emmy's salivating at that. I shouldn't, but I think that's it.
All this meant Emmy still had a chance. If nobody could reach the Hall of Fame, whoever made it the furthest, the fastest, would take the crown, and Emmy's time to Lance's final Pokemon had her in the driver's seat. But all she could do was watch and pray for the downfall of DRXX and Gian. DRXX did make it through the Aerodactyl thanks to an Ice Beam into E-Speed from his Dragonite, but it cost him most of Dragonite's health. He tried to save it with a Metal Claw crit attempt from Sneasel, but he couldn't find the out. And after taking out the Tyranitar, his Granbull fell to the Kingdra to end the run. Gian was happy to take this one slow and steady. He opened with Rest Talk Skarmory to render Kangaskhan useless. The Lemberry on his Tyranitar came in clutch to nullify an Ice Beam freeze from Lance's Dragonite, and Tyranitar clinched the 2-hit KO with Rock Throw. In came Kingdra, and once again, Gian was happy to take it slow and steady, wearing it down with Meganium. The Kingdra managed to rest off the damage once, but Gian stayed the course, and Meganium took it out, living only on 33 HP. But its job was done here. The Meganium sacrifice led Gian to bring in Slowbro, a perfect counter to Lance's Aerodactyl. Slowbro took out the arrow with Waterfall. Now Gian just had to sacrifice his way through. Slowbro chipped the Gyarados most of the way down, on its way out, with Gengar able to finish the job, but it was still a bit scary. After the sacrifice, Gian only had Mantine and a sleeping Skarmory left to deal with Lance's last Mon, the Tyranitar. It looked scary to the spectators, but Gian knew he had already locked down the win. No need to rely on a sleep talk roll, his Skarmory was ready to wake up, and it unleashed the winning Steel Wing to take down the Tyranitar and open the door to the Hall of Fame. You never know what's going to happen when you set up a unique Nuzlocke competition like this. These games are so punishing and have so many random elements leading to an incalculable amount of possible outcomes. Many of these outcomes, frankly, aren't that interesting as a spectator. Everybody could wipe right away. Things could take way longer than expected. One player's box could reveal itself as way better than everybody else's right away, leading to a 3-hour race where the winner has been obvious for the last 2.5. But you couldn't script a better race than this one. It's still mind-blowing that the top 3 runners, after 2.5 hours and 18 fights, were still within 20 seconds of each other, coming out of the Bruno fight, and if not for the hacks suffered by pChal against Will, it could have been 4 of them. What we got was the perfect display of what high-level Crystal Kaizo Plus can be, and some intense drama as the race literally came down to the last Pokemon. Now I just need to not get sick for the next one so I can actually cast it live. Subscribe.